Next news at 9. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560. The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. This is, it's not remarkable. It can't be surprised, but it really is just a head scratcher. Maricopa County, Arizona, is saying it needs up to 2 weeks after the election to tabulate the results, and so be patient. This is a local affiliate providing the context.
Tight races, high interest in the election, and a 2-page ballot are leaving Maricopa County officials warning of lines on Election Day, and also warning it's going to take them 10 to 13 days to tabulate results. 2 pages and an average of 79 contests per ballot.
We are expecting heavy turnout this year, and so that's why we're really encouraging people to vote early.
2 weeks out from Election Day, and some votes are in.
More than 400,000 people have cast their ballot in Maricopa County.
That's out of an anticipated 2.1 million voter turnout this year.
We are seeing a little bit of a lag of where we were in 2020, but the last few days we've actually seen an uptick in turnout, so I am expecting that we will start approaching very close to those 2020 numbers.
What can impact the amount of results released and when? Early ballots dropped off on Election Day.
Our races will be close.
And on Election Day, lines are expected, even with an increase in vote centers and voting booths at those vote centers.
If you're going to vote on Election Day, vote in person and use that on-site tabulator so that those votes will be tabulated on that evening, as opposed to dropping off your early ballot on Election Day.
So he's projecting, or Maricopa County officials that you heard from are projecting that approximately 40% of the total vote will early vote. And yet, despite that, they're still not going to be able to tabulate the results within under 10 to 13 days from the election.
I know. And the Arizona GOP chairperson, Gina Swoboda, and I'll retweet this out, she explained in detail how this happened. She's like, well, just imagine if 400,000 of you drop off your mail-in ballots on Election Day. We don't, that they can't count it. She's like, because some will be damaged and we have to double-check signatures. So they can't get it together. Florida can get it together. Other bigger states can get it together, but
and
Maricopa
countries
County can't.
And countries. Argentina had their election results countrywide the night of when Milei won. I mean, that's inexcusable. And why is she making excuses? That's a GOP official making excuses for Maricopa County's election authorities.
Explaining it. I'll tweet it out.
That's not explaining. That's not an explanation. That's bull jive. That's propagandizing. However it happens. First of all, you set up the regime. You and the state government there. You set up the protocols. And now you're saying, well, we can't abide the protocols that we set up such that we turn around the election results in a reasonable period of time, knowing what we already know about Arizona being a battleground state, knowing what they know about Arizona being a battleground state. That's nonsense. It's totally unacceptable. And there's no legitimate defense to it.
Michigan's doing the same thing. I don't know if you want to hear a little bit from Ms. Benson, the Secretary of State there. Not going to have election results on Tuesday.
Well, in 2020, we had the results of our highest turnout election in Michigan history within 24 hours of the polls closing. The unofficial results were completed by 8 p.m. on Wednesday. So we're tracking that again this year. We do have more options to process ballots sooner than Election Day, which is where we were restricted in 2020. So I'm optimistic we could see results even sooner, but I would estimate end of the day on Wednesday as the best guess on how we'll perform. But that said, we will always prioritize accuracy.
That's not the same thing. That's not the same thing. What are you talking about? End of business on Wednesday? It should be Tuesday night, Wednesday morning at the latest, but end of business is tolerable because, first of all, depending on the spread, you're able to project a winner as long as you have the vote count substantially done by the end of business on, being the end of the night on Tuesday. So that's not Maricopa County. And frankly, the fact that Michigan can do that would necessarily include Detroit, and Maricopa County can't. Maricopa County is just a rank embarrassment. I don't know. I don't know how the Republican Party allows that to go on in Maricopa County. That is absurd, the argument they're making. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by James Bovard, contributing editor for the American Conservative and author of, most recently, Last Rites, The Death of American Liberty. That's optimistic. James, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's always good to put some positive thinking here, spin.
Yes, the death of American liberty. That's certainly something to get excited about. Well, you wrote a piece about this war the Democrats have been waging on honest voting for a few generations now. That's just perhaps come into focus in the last couple of cycles. So, distill that for us, and please feel free to comment on Maricopa County if you want.
Yeah, that's a good point you made on Maricopa. It's appalling that they would claim that they're going to need practically to the New Year's Day to tell us how many people voted which way. Maricopa has a long history of brazen fraud. They're very squirrely about what they've done with the mail-in ballots. They just say, yeah, well, it looks like a signature. It's close enough for government work, which is the same standard that they used in Detroit in 2020. That was part of why Biden carried that state. And similar BS in Wisconsin. You had the Wisconsin Supreme Court that said the 500 unmanned ballot boxes, drop-off boxes in big cities in Wisconsin were illegal. Didn't matter. Those votes still counted. You had the Wisconsin government officials, even the election commission, were telling people to falsely claim that they could not leave their homes to vote by mail, which of course opened the door to all kinds of fraud because there was no way to check IDs on that. But it's just bizarre how in the last 10 years it's become a human rights violation to ask for identification at voting places. So.
Speaking of Wisconsin, this is another story too. I mean, these attorneys general, these secretaries of state in some of these blue states are really something. The attorney general in the state of Wisconsin had the home of Wausau Mayor Doug Dinney raided because he's the mayor of the town of Wausau. He publicly, there's pictures of it, picked up a unsecured absentee ballot drop box to move it to a place where it would be secured. He noticed the city clerk had set up a drop box for election ballots outside City Hall. The drop box wasn't bolted to the ground or well lit, as the best practice guidelines from the Wisconsin Election Commission specify. So he grabbed a hand trolley, put on a hard hat, wheeled it back to the building. He then emailed the facilities manager to let him know he had brought the box inside so the lack of security could be resolved. The ballot box was still equipped with a lock plate, so no ballots had been deposited. And State Attorney General Josh Kaul, a Democrat, had his home raided over this as some sort of possible election interference.
Well, it's amazing to see how the Democrats are turning America into a drop box democracy in which you've got no verification, you have all this paid ballot harvesting, you have almost zero checks to see whether a ballot is actually from the person whose name is on it, and you've also got a big blocking of people to check whether people are American citizens when they vote. So there are just so many different ways, and part of what's amusing here is the boundless piety of people who are destroying the checks and balances that American elections have had for hundreds of years. They act like they're doing God's work, and like we're supposed to presume that every piece of paper with a mark came straight from Mount Sinai.
I know you're a libertarian kind of guy, and so
kind of guy. Okay, well,
yeah. So
I have my vices, but go ahead.
But I'm just saying, so certainly opposed to centralized power, generally speaking. But what do you think? What do you think about if Trump and Republicans did take back both the executive and legislative branches, pushing for a national election day and reining in effectively all of these, weeks and weeks on end of early voting and so forth. National Voting Day, national election, an election day nationally. Here's the protocol, and the states can fill in the blanks underneath, some of them, but other prescriptions, ID, and you have to have an excuse in order to vote absentee.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be a good idea. I think that Congress could set the standards for federal elections for the Congress and their president.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, if states and localities want to do it differently, that's fine. But some kind of standard, and this whole nonsense of voting season, it just opens up the door to so many types of frauds, and it's frustrating to me. I mean, I've had doubts about how politicians interpret election results for a long time, but in the last 6-7 years, especially with 2020, the floodgates were opened. There was far more fraud, and yet we're supposed to act like there was no fraud, or else you're a Hitler supporter or whatever. It's just so much bad faith on this entire issue.
Well, do you feel we'll have a safe and secure election in 12 days from now?
Safe and secure by what standard? I mean, if you've got ballot harvesting, you've got BS. And there are a lot of places. I mean, you see what happened 4 years ago with Mark Zuckerberg. You had $400 million coming from a private entity to these coffers of some of these election offices in big cities. And it's just sad. There was the story I did for American Conservative on Sunday talked about an Inspector General report on Afghanistan. And Afghanistan had all these presidential elections funded by U.S. taxpayers, and they were utterly fraudulent. And the U.S. government knew it, but they still acted like they were bona fide. There were so many different ways that the cheating went on, including by computerized voting. And there were some great warnings from the Inspector General for Afghanistan, the U.S. official, saying, look, it doesn't, simply because there's electronic voting doesn't mean it's honest. It makes it easier to steal votes that way.
That'd be a good slogan for the Kamala Walz ticket, Make America Afghanistan. James?
Well, yes, thank you. That's a good idea.
James Bovard, contributing editor for the American Conservative and author most recently of Last Rites, The Death of American Liberty. James, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
You know, the big wireless companies want you to overpay for data that you don't need, but you don't have to settle for that with Pure Talk. Well, you get to choose how much data that you actually want. And for $25 a month, you'll get unlimited talk, unlimited text. You're going to get mobile hotspot, 5 gigs of data. Go with Pure Talk, and you get to choose how much data you actually want. Just dial pound 250, say the keyword save now, and if you do it now, you'll save an additional 50% off your first month from Pure Talk.
Did you know your life insurance is an asset you can sell? I'm Jay Jackson, CEO of Abacus Life. For almost 20 years, Abacus has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors just like you. And at abacuspays.com, we've created a free policy value calculator so you can find out the worth of your policy in just seconds. There are no fees.